Welcome to the webinar, How Do I Review a Data Article? My name is Dr. Larisa Yarovay, and I'm a section editor of the Data in Brief journal with responsibility for economics. Today, we will talk about what is Data in Brief journal, what are the components of a data article, what should you keep in mind when you review a data article, how do I submit a review, and if you would like to become a reviewer of a Data in Brief journal, I also will provide you some guidance how to do so. But first of all, let me start with positive news. The Data in Brief journal will have impact factor very soon in 2023. Currently, the citation score of Data in Brief journal is 2.4. So what is Data in Brief? Data in Brief is a multidisciplinary, open access, peer-reviewed journal which publishes short, digestible data articles that describe and provide access to research data. The editors-in-chief are Nicholas Polan from University of Northern Colorado and Naomi Sinkovich from University of Glasgow Adam Smith Business School. Data Brief abides by the FAIR principles, where F stands for findable. Metadata and data should be easy to find for both humans and computers. Data should be accessible. So once the user finds the required data, they need to know how they can be accessed, possibly included authentication and authorization. Interoperability, the data usually needs to be integrated with other data. And reusability, so metadata and data should be well described so they can be replicated and combined in different settings. What are the components of a data article? Data articles describe raw data and do not provide conclusions or interpretive insights and findings. And so if you will review the data article and you will see that this article contains some research results, findings, some insights, you can ask authors to remove this information from data article because data articles should just describe the data. Also, the main point of data article that the raw data is hosted in a data repository, and both the article and the link to the data will become available online, and they will have a data identification number and direct URL to data. Therefore, it makes your data easily accessible by the academic community, available for replication, available for further research. And therefore, our authors are quite interested to publish data articles because it's a great way to increase citations of your main paper and just to maximize the impact of your research. So typically, data article will comprise from abstract, which is a short description of the data. After, you need to provide information about the data, like a subject, specific subject area, type of data, how data were acquired, and data format. Also, each data article should explain clearly the value of the data. And after the value of the data has been explained by several bullet points, for example, the main article should contain description of the data. Apart from describing the data, the process of data collection and data gathering should be really clearly explained. This could be done in experimental design, materials, and method section. This is a very important section to pay attention to because apart from the value of the data and how the data set itself constructed, it is very important that authors provided clear information how exactly this data set has been constructed and whether the methodology and procedures for data collection have been followed carefully by the authors. Therefore, we need the help of reviewers and our large team of editors to pay attention to details. And we have a broad scope of our experts from each subject area and from specific subject area. And we always searching for new reviewers and new editorial board members with various expertise who can enhance the expertise of our board and help us to evaluate the data quality and assess methodological procedures behind these data. So what should you keep in mind when you review a data article? There are three key questions that you can ask when you're reviewing the article. Is data suitable for data in brief? And here directly you can refer to the scope of data in brief that we publish in raw original data that been acquired by authors. Is this data adding value to the scientific community? Yeah, and by value, we need to know that the data is basically original and someone can benefit from getting access to this data. And authors need to explain the value very, very clearly. Therefore, this section typically contains some bullet points where authors very clearly explaining what are the main value factors, what are the main strengths of this data article and why this data article should get published and why it will be interesting for academic community. And the third question, is it reusable by the community? So whether the data are shared and described clearly, and all methods necessary to reproduce are present in the data article. So if someone else wants to construct similar data set or to reuse this data set from this data article, they should get all the essential information how they can do it. So if the data article meet these three requirements, then you can already focus on certain further specific details when you're reviewing the paper. So data in brief welcomes, again, raw data, simulated data with the relevant code, negative data, and served data. So all the data that can be originally produced by the authors. However, there are some exceptions, and we have specific policy in place for sensitive data, secondary data, meta-analysis, and data from systematic review. Let me provide one example of secondary data. In economics, the majority of data that we are utilizing are actually secondary data that often access from available databases that virtually costless to obtain. Therefore, we typically wouldn't publish this type of data that we know any other academic can simply to go to a regional data provider, to the database, and to download exactly same data set relatively quickly. However, occasionally we can see the examples of secondary data article that include some variables that uniquely introduced by authors and that make this article and this data quite original, that describe clearly the procedure, how these variables been constructed, and explaining why this secondary data should be published, because maybe the process of constructing such data set is actually really time consuming. Also very large data set, even if the secondary data set that where data have been collected from multiple sources and that's really, really time consuming to construct, this data set could add value to the academic community and can be reused by other scholars. Therefore, we welcome such articles, even if the data is secondary. Yeah, but it's of course will be really depends on the subject area. As I said, in economics, in finance, occasionally we can publish some secondary data if this data set is complex. Some variables that have been introduced are unique. The data set constructed in some original way and contain valuable data that we know will be very, very impactful. So here we rely on your expertise and your judgments and the judgments of reviewers, whether by knowing your field, you know how quickly this data and easily this data can be accessed. And we really think that secondary data adds value to the community. We also can accept such data articles. Data in brief is not looking for supplementary files from a review article. That's we basically not publishing. Majority of these papers will be desk rejected by section editors, so subject editors, or any associate editors or board members, and rarely even will be sent for review. However, as a reviewer, if you received some articles that describe such data, you can recommend rejection of this article. We also do not accept data from case report studies. So as you can see in the guidance from the journal, that what data are suitable for data in brief. Almost all pieces of information can be defined as data. However, to merit publication in data in brief, data should be a set of information that is acquired, collected with a scientific method. Your data must also be accurate, reusable, reproducible, replicable, and of value of the research community. So the following policy on scope applies. DIB welcomes all original data that have been produced by the authors at a recognized professional research academic institutions. All protocols or methods used to acquire to collect data for data in brief article should adhere to strict ethical guidance. Yeah, for example, studies in humans and animals. Data should be owned by authors, and it's also very important. Data should be original, owned by authors, and authors should have right to share and to publish this article and to make this data set freely available for the academic community to reuse. Do the authors adequately explain its value to the community? And this is crucial section. Why is this data useful? Who can benefit from this data? How can this data be used, reused for further insights on development of experiments? Here you can read this example, and I think this is a very good and clear example how the value of the data has been described, and specifically how authors highlighted that most of these data, typically written in Japanese, without a digital object identifier and reported only in figures without raw data tables. This compilation of the data enables easy access. So they're explaining that they combine this data and compile this data, and this data will not be available elsewhere apart from these data articles. Therefore, it's clearly adding value to the academic community and to the scientific community. Please also read the guide for authors for further details. So is it reusable by the community? It's a very, very tricky question, of course. Of course, as a reviewer, you do not know whether anyone can actually reuse this data or not, or whether they will be willing to reuse it. However, you can assess whether potentially if someone will want to reuse this data, is the data well documented? Is the data format standard and reusable? You can assess this. Are the protocols for generating data adequate? So as an expert of this field, you should be able to assess the protocols for data collection and should be able to provide a comments whether it's accurate or not. All protocols and methods used to acquire, collect data should be adhered to strict ethical guidance. If you think that there are some problems with ethics, of course, these data articles should be either rejected or they can be sent for review so the authors can clarify, if something is not clear in terms of the ethics, they should submit very, very clear protocols in terms of the ethical data collection and handling. How do you submit a review? Let me explain you. So first, when you will receive invitation to review a data article, typically receiving by email, you can either accept or to decline this invitation. And please, we really will appreciate even if you don't have time, for example, to review this article or these articles outside of your area of expertise, do not ignore this email and just press decline the invitation if you are not available at this time. However, if you accepted the invitation, we really hope that you will accept the invitation to review the data article, you will receive a follow-up email providing a deadline for your comment, instruction on how to conduct your review. So this email will look like this, and here you will be able to see the number of this data article and the deadline by when you need to submit your comments. All right. You need to read manuscript and provide comments. So all data in brief manuscripts are quite short, so it shouldn't take too much of your time to read it. Also, you need to click on the link provided within the article to see the data set, and to see that the data set that attached to this article is actually matching the content of the paper, and it's exactly as been described by the authors. So you need to read the manuscript keeping 3 key questions in mind, as well as the data in brief template requirements. Yeah, again, as the data original and produced by the authors. Yeah, whether this data adding value to the academic community and whether this data are reusable. If you are late with your comments, you will receive a reminder, and you always can contact journal and to ask for extension of the deadline. But the most important that you keep us informed whether we should wait for your review or you will not be able to submit your review on time. And after, you would need to complete the manuscript rating card and provide the detailed comments for author, whether you want to send the paper to for review, or you need to explain for revision, or you would have to explain authors why this paper is not suitable for publication in Data in Brief. These comments will be assessed by the handling editor and will be forwarded after to the authors. So this is how the manuscript rating cards look like. We designed this card just to simplify the process for our reviewers and to speed up the reviewing process. So you would need to basically, as a checklist, to assess the following questions and answer the following questions. Are these data original and produced by the authors? Yes, no, or not applicable? Yeah, so if probably the answer is no, then the paper will get rejected. Yeah, so it should be original data. So you need to answer yes. Are these data secondary? If no, yeah, you can go to the question number 3. However, if the answer is yes and the data is secondary, you will have to answer 3 additional questions about the secondary data. So the first one, secondary data only, where these data collected using variables that make the study unique. Is this collection of secondary data of value of the research community? And do the authors provide the protocol for collecting, creating this data? Right? If the authors using questionnaires, yeah, you can answer the yes on the third question. Have the authors used the questionnaire on survey? Yes, no, and not applicable. Okay. And again, if no, you can go straight away to question 4. If yes, you need to answer questions about questionnaires. Is the questionnaire service direct, unambiguous, and unbiased? It is very important, because if the questionnaire contains biases, then the data obviously will be biased as well and will be inaccurate. Is the sampling representative of the population and rigorous for a scientific method? So here, as a subject expert, again, you know what is a representative sample for in this research field in terms of the population, and have the authors provided the full questionnaire or survey used. This is also very important to assess the survey and the quality of questions that have been asked. Question 4, do the authors adequately explain the research community the utility of this data? And here you can either answer yes, or if you answer no, but all other fields like basically acceptable, you can also occasionally recommend or advise authors to explain data better, and you can send the paper for revision. All right. Is the protocol method for generating these data adequately described in experimental design materials and methods section? Also, yes, no, not applicable. Have the authors provided the raw data related to any tables, graphs, images, and charts? Are these data publicly available? Also should be yes. And if these data are deposited in repository, is the link to the data provided and whether the link works? We cannot publish any article if the link to the actual data set is working properly. Yeah, therefore, we need to ensure that you can access to the data set. If this data article is related to an existing primary research article, is there any duplication? Again, yeah, this data could be used already by authors, and in the majority of cases, this data would have some sort of identification of the main manuscripts that have been either submitted, already published elsewhere. Yeah, but you need to then click on this link and to compare whether there is not significant duplications. Again, data in brief articles need just simply to describe data and do not need to provide any results, interpretations, and insights. If you would like to become a reviewer data in brief, it's very easy to sign up. You simply scan the QR code that is available here. And you will be able to create your generic Elsevier account and nominate yourself as a reviewer, just to express your interest to become a reviewer in Data in Brief. Also, if you are submitting a data article yourself to the journal, you will be automatically added to our reviewer pool, to our reviewer database. As a reviewer, what should you remember? Data articles describe raw data and do not provide conclusions or interpretive insights. All raw data must be hosted in a data repository. A constructive review should concentrate on the suitability, value, and reusability of the data described in a data article. It is key to complete the manuscript ratings card, so to answer all these 10 questions provided, and provide constructive comments to the authors. It doesn't have to be very long or excessively long comments, but they should be constructive. If you have any questions, we are happy to answer them and provide support. Please contact us and DIB Data in Brief me at elsevier.com. I also would like to share some informative links like Data in Brief at a Glance, Guide for Authors, the link to our submission system and editorial manager, how Data in Brief manuscripts are reviewed, very useful resource, and Data in Brief, what data are suitable, because probably this is the key question that you need to address when you're reviewing the article, whether data is suitable for publication in Data in Brief or not. I really hope that you enjoyed this webinar, and if you will have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. I really hope that you will nominate yourself as a reviewer, and if you will receive our invitation to review the article, you will be able to help. And I would like to welcome you to our Data in Brief community. Thank you very much.